You know, the Kursk. It's a name that probably rings a bell for a lot of us. A real ghost from the year 2000. But the full story of the 118 men on that Russian nuclear submarine, well, it's so much more than just a distant memory. It's a really chilling lesson in what happens when mechanical failure, national pride, and fatal delays all collide. So today we're going to unpack exactly how a mission to save lives turned into a mission to recover bodies.
Okay, so where do we even begin? I think we have to start with maybe the most haunting piece of evidence ever pulled from a disaster site. The official reports would come much, much later, but the real human story of what happened in those final hours, it starts right here, with this one simple scribbled note.
So this note, it was found in the pocket of an officer, Lieutenant D.R. Kolesnikov. He wrote it blindly, in the pitch-black cold, and it confirmed a truth that is just horrifying to even think about. After these massive explosions sank the submarine, a small group of men were still alive, trapped in the very back of the sub, just clinging to the hope that a rescue was on its way.
And that right there, that's the question that just eats at you, doesn't it? We know the explosions didn't kill everyone. So what did? The answer isn't simple. It wasn't one thing, but a whole tragic domino effect of bad luck, terrible timing, and a series of just devastating human decisions.
So to figure out what went so wrong with the rescue, we've got to rewind. We have to go back to the beginning, back to what went wrong with the submarine itself. Let's go to August 12, 2000, the day the absolute pride of the Russian Navy just disappeared.
You have to picture the scene. This was supposed to be a huge moment for Russia. Their new president, a guy named Vladimir Putin, was in charge, and they were putting on their biggest naval exercise in a decade. It was a real show of force. And right at the center of it all was the Kursk, an Oscar II-class submarine, truly the crown jewel of their fleet.
And what a ship it was. I mean, this thing was an absolute beast. We're talking 154 meters long. That's longer than a football field and a half, and 4 stories high. It had this special double hull, which was designed to take a direct hit from a torpedo. They literally called it unsinkable. And then, catastrophe. It all happened so fast. At 11:28 in the morning, a practice torpedo, it malfunctions and explodes. Just 2 minutes later, at 11:30, that fire sets off a second, much bigger explosion. This one was so powerful it actually registered as an earthquake. And just like that, the unsinkable sub was sent crashing to the bottom of the sea, 100 meters down.
The blasts just annihilated the front half of the sub, but miraculously the nuclear reactor section in the compartments behind it, they held. And in the freezing, pitch-black darkness of the 9th compartment, the one with the rear escape hatch, 23 sailors managed to find each other, and they began to wait.
Okay, so we have 23 men alive on the bottom of the ocean. The clock is ticking, right? The race against time has begun. But from the very start, the rescue effort was just a mess, plagued by delays, failures, and this crippling inability to admit how bad the situation really was. First off, it took hours for the Navy to even admit something was wrong. Then for days, their own little rescue subs tried and failed, over and over, to connect to the Kursk's escape hatch. And all the while, officials were telling the frantic families, "We hear tapping sounds, we're in communication." They were feeding them this sliver of hope that was just slipping away by the hour.
So while Russia is fumbling its own rescue attempts, the rest of the world is watching, and offers of help start pouring in. And this is where the story takes a critical turn. This is where we see a collision, not just between countries, but between 2 totally different ways of thinking.
For 5 whole days, Russia said, "Nope, we got this." They turned down help from the UK, Norway, the United States. Why? Well, it all comes down to old-school Cold War paranoia. The thought of letting Western navies get anywhere near one of their most advanced submarines, with all its secrets, it was just unthinkable to them.
Now this slide, this really gets to the core of why this went so horribly wrong. It wasn't just about equipment, it was about culture. A study later on really broke it down. On one side, you have the Russian system. It's rigid, it's top-down, you follow the plan, period. Initiative is not your friend. On the other side, you have the British Royal Navy, which is built on empowerment. Officers are expected to adapt, to take initiative, to do the right thing. You've got these 2 completely opposite philosophies trying to work together in a life-or-death situation. It's a chilling example of how a broken culture can be just as deadly as a broken torpedo.
So you had this massive culture clash, you have days of fatal delays, and by the time Russia finally says yes to outside help, the mission, well, it had tragically changed. It wasn't really a rescue anymore.
The British commander on the scene, a guy named Commodore David Russell, he saw it right away, and his words are just haunting. He said he realized his objective, saving lives, was no longer shared by the other side. Think about that for a second. The mission had pivoted from a human rescue to a military salvage operation. It was about controlling the situation and avoiding embarrassment.
Finally, on August 21st, a full 9 days after the submarine went down, Norwegian commercial divers are finally allowed to go in. These guys are the best in the world, experts from the oil industry. They make it down to the escape hatch of that 9th compartment, the one place where those 23 men were supposed to be waiting.
They manage to open the inner hatch. They lower a camera inside, and the truth is just devastating. The compartment's completely flooded, but it's worse than that. The walls are all blackened and blistered. The men hadn't slowly suffocated. The evidence suggests a flash fire had erupted, probably when one of their air regeneration cartridges touched the oily seawater. It would have instantly consumed all the oxygen and killed everyone inside.
And just like that, it was over. All hope was officially gone. But the story of the Kursk, its ghost, you could say, that was just beginning to haunt Russia, its new leader, and the entire global naval community.
President Putin, who was brand new to the job, got absolutely hammered for how he handled this. I mean, he stayed on vacation in Sochi for 5 days after the sub sank. The whole disaster exposed these deep flaws in the Russian military, and in the end, not a single official was ever held responsible for the 118 deaths.
So what's left behind? Well, there are memorials, like this one. They actually used the real conning tower, the sail, from the Kursk itself. It now stands in Murmansk as this silent, gut-wrenching symbol of the human price that gets paid when systems fail.
You know, this tragedy was felt so deeply by submariners all over the world. This quote from a former U.S. Navy guy on Reddit, it just says it all. All submariners are brothers. It doesn't matter what flag you fly. It's a small, tight-knit group. And when a sub goes down, it's a loss for everyone who serves in that silent service beneath the waves.
So in the end, the story of the Kursk really boils down to one terrible, stark lesson. It shows you exactly what happens when national pride and secrecy become more important than a desperate plea for help from the bottom of the ocean. And it leaves all of us with a really tough question, doesn't it? In a crisis, what's more important, saving face or saving lives?